Government ministers here have been at pains to point out that Zimbabwe is not backtracking on indigenization, and this is not a policy U-turn, but just a policy review. And this follows statements made by President Robert Mugabe at the country's 34th independence celebrations. He pointed out that Zimbabwe would push for 100% ownership of its natural resources, including land, minerals, and wildlife. Investors in these sectors would recoup their investment by way of profit sharing. I spoke to the head of Zimbabwe's investment authority earlier today, and he did point out that they've been making a raft of recommendations to government, some of which are being taken on board. He also acknowledged that the policy has indeed kept at bay potential investment in Zimbabwe.
We've given our input, and our input is very, very clear that in line with the Constitution, insofar as the land is concerned, it's a no issue. We want leases, 100-year leases to be given out to people, and these can be rolled over and commercialized. And then insofar as 51% is concerned on the resources, as government have recently clarified, the resources are owned by, Zimbabweans, and there will be, a sovereign fund created for that specific purpose, and that will then allow for the 51% ownership. Beyond that, if foreigners do come in, as is in the case of ESA, if they bring technology, if they can prove through an empowerment points scale that is to be developed by the ministry, then they certainly can breach that 51% mark and take control.
Questions have also arisen about the timing of this announcement by government. I spoke to an economic analyst earlier who shed more light on why he thinks this announcement is being made now.
Knowing very well that the fruits of the whole model of indigenization, which had been in operation rather since the promulgation of law in 2008, had not been paying dividends to the nation. Also, the government somehow is realizing that this had been quite tragicomic for economic growth, and I want to believe most investors, both domestic and international, had been clamoring for a serious review.
Do you think the investors will immediately come back to the party on the sentiment that we're seeing now, or could they hold out?
Whenever any law is introduced in any part of the world, what scares investors much more is not necessarily the law itself, but it's that level of uncertainty, the haziness. So to expect investors to rush to Zimbabwe simply because the authorities are saying we are clamping down or we are revising the policy, it will be like maybe expecting too much at this juncture.
Well, clearly this law continues to stir debate and will continue to be talked about for much longer. The man responsible, the minister in charge of indigenization, Francis Nema, told me he would be able to give the final word and total clarity on indigenization next week after sitting down with his counterparts in cabinet. Farai Mwakutuya, CCTV, Harare, Zimbabwe.